The moment I saw Brenda Patterson from the HOA standing on my porch in the middle of a February blizzard, I knew my peaceful morning was about to turn into a nightmare. "Mr. Lambert, we need to talk about your contractual obligations," she said, her thin lips pressed together so tightly they'd gone white. Snow swirled around her perfectly coiffed blonde hair, which somehow remained immaculate despite the weather. She wore a designer coat that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and she held a leather folder clutched against her chest like it contained nuclear launch codes. I took a sip of my coffee and leaned against the doorframe. "Brenda, it's 6 in the morning on a Saturday. Whatever this is about can wait until Monday." "No, it absolutely cannot." She pushed past me into my house without invitation, tracking snow across my hardwood floors. "As HOA president, I'm here to inform you of an immediate violation that requires your attention." I closed the door and turned to face her, already feeling the familiar tension building in my shoulders. I'd moved to this development in Traverse City, Michigan, 3 years ago, thinking the lakefront property and well-maintained common areas would be worth dealing with an HOA. I'd been wrong. Brenda Patterson had been elected president 18 months ago, and since then, she transformed the Lakeview Estates Homeowners Association from a reasonable organization into her personal fiefdom. "What violation?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. It showed the community clubhouse, a large building about 200 yards from my property that housed a gym, meeting rooms, and a small cafe. The roof was covered in at least 3 feet of snow. According to Section 47, Paragraph C of your HOA contract, all homeowners within 200 feet of community buildings are responsible for snow removal from those buildings' roofs during heavy snowfall events. I stared at her. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "It's in your contract, Mr. Lambert. Perhaps you should have read it more carefully before signing." She produced another photo, this one showing the community pool house, which was even closer to my property. "Both structures are in danger of roof collapse due to snow load. We need you to handle it immediately." "Brenda, I'm not climbing onto commercial building roofs in the middle of a blizzard. That's insane and dangerous. Hire a professional snow removal company." Her eyes narrowed. "The HOA budget doesn't cover that expense." "That's precisely why we have this clause in the contract. Homeowners near community structures take responsibility for their maintenance." "Let me see that contract." I held out my hand. She clutched the folder tighter. "You received a copy when you purchased your home. Then you won't mind if I review it again." "Show me." After a long moment, she pulled out a thick stack of papers and flipped through them. Her perfectly manicured fingernail pointed to a dense paragraph of legal text. I took the pages from her and read carefully. The clause was there, buried in the middle of hundreds of pages of HOA regulations. But the wording was strange, almost deliberately vague. It said homeowners within 200 feet may be called upon to assist with emergency maintenance of nearby structures. It said nothing specific about snow removal, and it certainly didn't make it a requirement. "This says may be called upon to assist, not are required to perform," I pointed out. "And it doesn't mention snow removal specifically." "The HOA board has voted to interpret this clause as applying to snow removal," Brenda said. "The vote was unanimous." "How many people are on the board?" "3. Myself, Carol Henderson, and Patricia Morrison." "Let me guess." 3 middle-aged women who have been friends since high school and don't live anywhere near the clubhouse. Her face reddened. "Our personal relationships are irrelevant. The decision stands. You have until Monday morning to clear both roofs or face a fine of $500 per day." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." She snatched the contract back from me. You signed an agreement to follow all HOA rules and regulations. This is now a rule. Follow it or face the consequences. She turned and walked back toward my door, leaving wet tracks across my floor. Before she left, she looked back at me. And Mr. Lambert, we've sent similar notices to the 5 other homeowners within range of community structures. You're not being singled out. This is simply about maintaining our community standards. After she left, I stood in my living room, coffee growing cold in my hand, and felt anger building in my chest. This was exactly the kind of power trip nonsense I'd been dealing with since Brenda took over. Last month, she'd threatened me with fines because my lawn furniture was the wrong shade of gray. The month before, she tried to ban me from parking my truck in my own driveway because it was too commercial looking. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer, Marcus Thompson. He'd helped me fight off 2 previous HOA disputes. Sebastian, it's Saturday morning, Marcus answered, his voice thick with sleep. I know, and I'm sorry, but Brenda Patterson just showed up at my house with a new insanity. I explained the situation. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Read me that exact clause again, he said. I pulled up a digital copy of my HOA contract on my computer and read the relevant section word for word. Okay, Marcus said slowly. Here's the thing. She's right that the board can interpret vague clauses, but she's wrong about this being enforceable. First, asking a homeowner to perform dangerous labor on commercial property opens the HOA up to massive liability. Second, the clause says assist, which implies voluntary action, not mandatory compliance. Third, they can't just spring this on you without proper notice and a chance to contest it. So what do I do? Send them a formal response declining to participate, citing safety concerns and the voluntary nature of the clause. Suggest they hire professionals and split the cost among all homeowners, which is how it should work anyway. If they fine you, we'll fight it. They threatened $500 per day, Marcus whistled. That's excessive and probably won't hold up. But Sebastian, document everything. Every conversation, every email, every interaction. If this goes to court, we'll need it all. After hanging up with Marcus, I drafted a careful email to the HOA board. I explained that I would not be performing the snow removal due to safety concerns and the voluntary wording of the contract clause. I suggested they hire a professional company and assess all homeowners equally for the cost. I copied Marcus on the email and sent it before I could second-guess myself. The response came within an hour. It wasn't from Brenda, but from Carol Henderson, the board secretary. Mr. Lambert, your refusal to comply with HOA directives has been noted. As of Monday morning, you will be assessed a fine of $500 per day until the snow is removed from both the clubhouse and pool house roofs. Additionally, the board has voted to place a lien on your property if fines exceed $2,000. Please reconsider your decision. I called Marcus back. They're not backing down. Then neither are we. Let them assess the fines. Don't pay them. We'll take this to court if necessary. In the meantime, I want you to do something for me. What? Call a structural engineer. Get an assessment of those building roofs. If they're genuinely in danger of collapse, the HOA is being negligent by not hiring professionals to handle it properly. That might give us leverage. I spent the rest of Saturday making calls. Most structural engineers weren't working on the weekend, but I finally reached David Chen, who agreed to come out Sunday morning if the weather cleared enough. The blizzard continued through Saturday night, dumping another foot of snow on top of what was already there. I watched through my window as the accumulation on the clubhouse roof grew higher and higher. Part of me wondered if I should just hire someone myself to clear it, but Marcus had been firm. Don't give in. Don't set a precedent. Sunday morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. David Chen arrived at 9, a compact man in his 50s with kind eyes and an impressive array of equipment in his truck. "Show me these buildings," he said. We trudged through the snow to the clubhouse first. David took photos, measurements, and notes. He used some kind of laser device to calculate the snow load and examined the roof structure from every angle. "This is a problem," he said finally. "You've got at least 40 inches of snow up there, and it's heavy, wet snow. The roof structure is rated for 30 inches maximum. You're probably looking at 8 to 10,000 pounds of excess weight." My stomach dropped. "So it could collapse." "It could. I'd give it a 60% chance within the next week if we get any more snow or if temperatures rise enough to add water weight." He looked at me seriously. "Someone needs to clear this today or tomorrow at the latest." We walked to the pool house next. The assessment was similar, though slightly less critical. "Okay, here's what I don't understand," I said as David finished his measurements. "If this is such an emergency, why is the HOA trying to force homeowners to do it instead of hiring professionals?" David shrugged. "Money, probably. Professional snow removal from commercial roofs isn't cheap. You're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 per building. So they'd rather risk a roof collapse than spend $8,000, apparently." David provided me with a detailed written report, complete with photos and calculations. I paid him for his time and immediately forwarded everything to Marcus with a copy to the HOA board. "The roofs are in danger of collapse," I wrote. "This is beyond homeowner maintenance capabilities and requires immediate professional intervention. I strongly urge the board to hire qualified contractors before someone gets hurt or property is damaged." Brenda's response came an hour later. "Mr. Lambert, thank you for confirming the urgency of the situation. This makes your refusal to assist even more problematic. The fine assessment will begin tomorrow morning as scheduled. Perhaps you should reconsider your selfish stance." I read the email 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each word. Selfish. She was calling me selfish for not risking my life to save the HOA money. I called Marcus again. "She's doubling down." "Good," Marcus said. "Let her. Every email she sends is evidence of negligence." "Sebastian, here's what's going to happen. Those roofs are probably going to collapse. When they do, the HOA's insurance will investigate. They'll find out the board knew about the danger, had the means to prevent it, but chose to try to force homeowners to take the risk instead. That's negligence, possibly gross negligence. So you're saying I should just let it happen?" "I'm saying you've done your due diligence. You've warned them, you've offered reasonable solutions, and you've documented everything. What happens next is on them, not you." Monday morning, I received a formal letter via certified mail. The fine had officially begun. $500 per day, starting immediately. I had 10 days to pay or contest before they would begin lien proceedings. I didn't pay. I didn't contest. I waited. Tuesday brought warmer temperatures, climbing into the high 30s. I could hear creaking and groaning from the clubhouse roof throughout the day. Wednesday, the temperature hit 42 degrees. I watched from my window as chunks of snow began sliding off the edges of the roof, crashing to the ground below. Thursday morning, I was working in my home office when I heard a sound like thunder. I rushed to the window and saw a cloud of snow and dust rising from where the clubhouse stood. My heart hammered as I grabbed my coat and ran outside. The clubhouse roof had partially collapsed. The entire center section had caved in, leaving the edges hanging at crazy angles. Snow and debris covered everything. I immediately called 911, then Marcus, then stood outside taking photos and videos. Fire trucks and police arrived within 10 minutes. They cordoned off the area and began checking for anyone who might have been inside. Thankfully, the building had been closed due to the snow emergency, so no one was hurt. Brenda Patterson arrived 20 minutes later, her face pale and drawn. She saw me standing at the edge of the crowd and marched over. "This is your fault," she hissed. "If you had just cleared the roof like you were supposed to, this wouldn't have happened." One of the firefighters, a tall man with captain's bars, turned to look at us. "Madam, who are you?" Brenda Patterson, HOA president. "And this building belongs to the HOA." "Yes, it's a community structure," the captain frowned. "When did you become aware of the snow load danger?" Brenda's eyes darted to me, then back to the captain. "We had reports that the snow was heavy, but we had systems in place to handle it." "What systems?" "The homeowners near the building were responsible for snow removal under their HOA contracts." The captain's expression hardened. "You expected homeowners to clear a commercial building roof. It's in their contracts," Brenda insisted. "Madam, that's potentially criminal negligence." "Do you have documentation of when you became aware of the structural danger and what steps you took to address it?" Brenda's face went from pale to red. "I don't have to answer your questions." "Actually, you do. This is now an investigation into potential code violations and negligence. I'm going to need to see all HOA correspondence regarding this building's maintenance." I stepped forward. "Captain, I have documentation that might be helpful." Over the next hour, I provided the fire captain with copies of all my emails to and from the HOA, David Chen's structural engineer report, and the timeline of events. The captain's expression grew darker as he reviewed everything. "Mr. Lambert, you did exactly the right thing," he said finally. "You identified the problem, you offered solutions, and you documented your concerns. The HOA chose to ignore professional advice and attempt to force unqualified individuals to perform dangerous work." He looked at Brenda. "Miss Patterson, I'm recommending this case be referred to the city attorney for review. You may want to consult with a lawyer." Brenda looked like she'd been slapped. "This is ridiculous. We were trying to maintain our community property." "By risking lives and ignoring engineering reports," the captain said. "That's not maintenance, madam. That's negligence." Over the next week, the situation snowballed. The pool house roof collapsed 2 days after the clubhouse, though with less dramatic damage. The HOA's insurance company launched a full investigation. I provided them with all my documentation as well. Then I received a call from the insurance investigator, a woman named Jennifer Morris. "Mr. Lambert, I want to thank you for your cooperation," she said. "Based on your documentation and our investigation, we've determined that the HOA board was negligent in their handling of this situation. However, I need to inform you that Ms. Patterson has filed a claim against you personally, arguing that you had a contractual obligation to prevent this damage. She's suing me. She's attempting to. Our legal team is reviewing the HOA contract. Between you and me, I don't think she has a leg to stand on, but I wanted you to be aware." I called Marcus immediately. He was already aware. "Brenda's lawyer sent me a demand letter this morning," he said. "They're claiming you owe the HOA $50,000 for the clubhouse damage and $30,000 for the pool house damage. They're also trying to collect the fines they assessed, which are now up to $4,000. That's insane. It's desperate." She knows the insurance company is going to deny the HOA's claim due to negligence, and she's looking for someone else to blame. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to countersue for harassment, improper fines, and violation of your property rights. We're also going to file a complaint with the state HOA regulatory board. Michigan has an HOA regulatory board. It has a department that handles HOA disputes within the Attorney General's office. What Brenda did violates several state regulations regarding HOA governance and homeowner rights. The countersuit hit Brenda and the HOA board like a bomb. I sued for $20,000 in damages, claiming harassment, improper fines, and violation of HOA rules regarding proper notice and due process. Marcus also filed complaints against all 3 board members with the Michigan Department of Attorney General. 2 weeks later, I received an interesting phone call from Carol Henderson, the HOA secretary. "Mr. Lambert, this is Carol. I wanted to talk to you off the record." "There's no such thing as off the record at this point, Carol. Everything is being documented." "I understand. I just wanted you to know that Patricia and I are resigning from the HOA board effective immediately." "Why?" "Because Brenda lied to us." Carol's voice cracked. "She told us you'd refuse to help, and that the contract clearly required you to clear the roofs. She showed us the clause but not your emails. She didn't tell us about the structural engineer's report. She didn't tell us you'd offered alternative solutions. Patricia and I thought you were just being difficult. When we found out the truth, we were horrified. She manipulated you." "Yes, and now we're potentially liable for her decisions. Our lawyers have advised us to distance ourselves from her and cooperate with the investigation." "What investigation?" "You haven't heard. The city attorney's office has opened a criminal investigation into the building collapses. They're looking at potential charges of reckless endangerment and criminal negligence." I sat down heavily. Criminal charges. The buildings were supposed to be inspected monthly. Brenda was falsifying inspection reports to save money. She also knew about the snow load danger a week before she came to your house, but she did nothing because she didn't want to spend the money. She only tried to force homeowners to do it after the insurance company told her they wouldn't cover emergency snow removal because the HOA had declined that coverage option to save on premiums. The full picture was starting to emerge. Brenda had been cutting corners on building maintenance for months to pad the HOA's reserve fund, which she'd been using to upgrade common areas to make the development look more prestigious. She'd known about the danger, known the right solution, but had gambled on forcing homeowners to solve the problem for free rather than spending the money properly. And she'd lost. 3 weeks after the clubhouse collapse, Brenda Patterson was arrested at her home. The charges were criminal negligence, filing false reports, and misuse of HOA funds. It turned out she'd also been paying herself an unauthorized salary from the HOA's accounts, something the Michigan Attorney General's office discovered during their investigation. The arrest made the local news. I watched the footage of Brenda being led out of her house in handcuffs, her perfect hair finally disheveled, her designer coat replaced with an orange jumpsuit. Part of me felt sorry for her, but mostly I felt vindicated. Marcus called me that evening. "Sebastian, we need to talk about the financial side of this." "What do you mean?" "The HOA's insurance company has denied their claim for the building collapses. They're citing negligence and breach of policy terms." That means the HOA is on the hook for roughly $200,000 in repairs and demolition. $200,000. The buildings are a total loss. They have to be demolished and rebuilt. The HOA doesn't have that kind of money in reserves, especially after Brenda's misappropriation. They're looking at a special assessment on all homeowners. How much per homeowner? There are 83 homes in the development. You're looking at about $2,400 per household. I swore. So I have to pay for Brenda's negligence, not necessarily. Here's where it gets interesting. The 6 homeowners who were threatened with fines, including you, have banded together. You're all arguing that the special assessment should exclude you because you specifically warned about this problem and offered solutions. We're proposing that the cost be split among the remaining 77 homeowners. Will that work? I think so. The other homeowners are furious with Brenda and the old board. Most of them are supportive of excluding the 6 of you from the assessment. There's going to be a special meeting next week to vote on it. The meeting was held at the local community center since the clubhouse was a pile of rubble. 200 people crammed into a room meant for 100. Emotions ran high. The new interim HOA president, a retired accountant named Robert Martinez, tried to maintain order. He explained the financial situation, the insurance denial, and the proposed special assessment. Then he opened the floor for discussion. It got ugly fast. Why should we pay for Brenda's mistakes? Someone shouted. The 6 homeowners she targeted shouldn't have to pay anything, another person called out. They tried to prevent this. We should sue Brenda personally and make her pay for everything, a third voice yelled. Robert raised his hands for quiet. We are pursuing legal action against Miss Patterson to recover what we can. However, she doesn't have personal assets sufficient to cover the full cost. Her house has a mortgage, her cars are leased, and her bank accounts are nearly empty. What about the money she stole? That totaled about $47,000 over 18 months. The Attorney General's office has frozen her assets and will recover what we can, but it's not enough to cover the building costs. The debate raged for 2 hours. Finally, someone made a formal motion to exclude the 6 targeted homeowners from the special assessment and split the cost among the remaining 77 households. The vote passed with 82% approval. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was replaced with something else. Guilt, maybe. I looked around the room at my neighbors, people who would now have to pay $3,000 each because of Brenda's decisions. They'd done nothing wrong, yet they were being punished. After the meeting, an elderly woman approached me. I recognized her as Margaret Chen, who lived 3 streets over. Mr. Lambert, I wanted to thank you, she said. For what? For standing up to Brenda. For documenting everything. If you hadn't done that, we might never have known about her embezzlement or her negligence. We might have paid that original special assessment without question, and she might have continued stealing from us. I was just protecting myself. You did more than that. You exposed corruption. That takes courage. Her words stayed with me as I drove home that night. I'd spent weeks feeling angry and vindictive, focused on proving I was right and Brenda was wrong. But Margaret was right. This had never been just about me. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Brenda Patterson pleaded guilty to criminal negligence and embezzlement in exchange for a reduced sentence. She got 18 months in jail, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay restitution to the HOA. Her lawyer argued that she'd been overwhelmed by the responsibility and had made poor decisions but had never intended to harm anyone. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Miss Patterson, you held a position of trust and authority, Judge Sandra Morrison said during sentencing. You were responsible for the safety and financial well-being of your community. Instead of fulfilling that responsibility, you cut corners, falsified documents, and attempted to endanger homeowners by forcing them to perform unsafe labor. Your actions resulted in the destruction of 2 buildings and significant financial harm to your neighbors. The fact that no one was physically injured is purely fortunate, not a result of your decision-making. I attended the sentencing hearing. So did about 30 other homeowners. When the judge announced the jail time, I heard someone behind me whisper, "She got off easy." Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. I was too tired to care anymore. My countersuit against the HOA was settled out of court. The new HOA board, which consisted entirely of new members elected in a special election, agreed to pay me $15,000 in damages, issue a formal apology, and expunge all the fines Brenda had assessed. They also agreed to completely revise the HOA bylaws to eliminate vague clauses and implement better oversight procedures. But the most satisfying moment came 3 months after the sentencing. I was working in my yard on a Saturday morning when a car pulled up. A man in his 40s stepped out, dressed in casual clothes and carrying a clipboard. "Mr. Lambert, I'm Stephen Morrison, the project manager for the new clubhouse construction. I wanted to introduce myself and let you know we'll be starting work next week." "Nice to meet you," I said, shaking his hand. "I also wanted to thank you," Stephen said. "I reviewed all the documentation from the original collapse, including your correspondence with the old board. You did everything right. You identified the problem, you offered solutions, and you documented your concerns. If more people approached HOA issues the way you did, we'd have a lot fewer disasters. I was just covering myself. You did more than that. You probably saved lives. If someone had been in that clubhouse when it collapsed, they could have been killed. Your refusal to back down kept the building closed during the critical period." After he left, I stood in my yard and looked at the empty lot where the clubhouse had been. Construction equipment was already being moved into place. By fall, there would be a new building there, better designed and more safely constructed. The pool house was already rebuilt, having been a smaller and simpler project. The HOA had used it as a test case for their new contractors and new oversight procedures. Every decision now required approval from 3 board members plus a review by an independent property manager. Financial reports were distributed monthly to all homeowners. The bylaws had been rewritten in plain English instead of legalese. Brenda Patterson's reign of petty tyranny had inadvertently resulted in the most transparent and well-run HOA in Traverse City. 2 weeks after the new clubhouse construction began, I received an unexpected piece of mail. It was a handwritten letter from Brenda, mailed from the county jail. "Mr. Lambert," it read, "I don't expect you to forgive me or even to respond to this letter. I'm writing because my therapist suggested I take accountability for my actions, and you deserve to hear this directly from me. I was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. I let pride and ego override my judgment. When you questioned my authority, I saw it as a personal attack rather than a legitimate concern. I convinced myself that you were being difficult, that you were the problem, and I used my position to punish you for challenging me. I never stopped to consider that you might be right. I never questioned whether I was serving the community or just serving my own need to be in control. The buildings collapsed because of my decisions. My neighbors are paying thousands of dollars because of my decisions. You were harassed and threatened because of my decisions. I can't undo any of it. I can only say that I'm sorry and that I'm trying to become a better person. I don't know if that means anything to you, but I needed to say it anyway. Brenda." I read the letter 3 times. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and throw it away. Part of me wanted to frame it as evidence of vindication. But mostly I just felt sad. I wrote back, keeping my response brief. "Brenda, I appreciate your apology. I hope you find the help you need and that you learn from this experience. What happened was terrible, but it doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Good luck with your recovery. Sebastian." I never heard from her again. Life slowly returned to normal. The new HOA board was competent and fair. The fines and threats stopped. The petty rules and regulations were replaced with reasonable guidelines. I could park my truck in my driveway without fear of harassment. My lawn furniture could be whatever color I wanted. The new clubhouse opened in September, 9 months after the original collapse. It was beautiful, modern, and engineered to handle twice the snow load of the old building. The HOA threw a grand opening party, and nearly every homeowner attended. Robert Martinez, who'd been elected permanent HOA president, gave a speech. This building represents not just new construction, but a new beginning for our community. We learned some hard lessons about governance, accountability, and the importance of listening to every voice, not just the loudest ones. We're committed to making sure what happened last winter never happens again. People applauded. Someone started a chant of "No more Brenda," which was funny at first but quickly became uncomfortable. Robert waved for silence. "Let's focus on the future, not the past," he said diplomatically. "We have a beautiful facility, a transparent board, and a community that's learned to work together. That's what matters." Later that evening, as the party wound down, a young couple approached me. I didn't know them well, but I recognized them as new residents who'd moved in over the summer. "You're Sebastian Lambert, right?" the woman asked. "That's me. We heard about what happened last winter. We almost didn't buy our house because of it, but then we learned about the reforms the HOA made. We did our research, and honestly, this is probably the best-run HOA in the state now." "That's good to hear. We just wanted to say thank you. You could have backed down, paid the fines, and avoided all the trouble. But you stood up for what was right, and now everyone benefits from it." After they walked away, I grabbed a beer from the refreshment table and wandered outside. The night air was cool, carrying the first hint of autumn. I looked up at the new clubhouse, its lights warm and welcoming against the darkening sky. Had I stood up for what was right, or had I just been stubborn? Had I been protecting the community or just protecting myself? Maybe it was both. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that the buildings were safe now. The HOA was accountable now. The community was stronger now, and I could finally park my truck in my driveway without waiting for a threatening letter to appear in my mailbox. Winter came again, as it always does in Michigan. The first heavy snow fell in late November, blanketing Lakeview Estates in white. I watched from my window as the accumulation grew on the new clubhouse roof, remembering the anxiety of the previous year. But this time was different. This time, before the snow even reached 12 inches, I saw professional snow removal trucks pulling up to the clubhouse. A crew of trained workers efficiently cleared the roof in less than 3 hours, using proper equipment and safety gear. I checked my email and found a message from the HOA board. "Routine snow removal completed. Cost of $700 split among all 83 homeowners. Your share is $8.43, added to your monthly HOA dues. Thank you for your cooperation in keeping our community safe." $8.43. The price of doing things properly. I smiled and went back to my coffee. That winter passed without incident. So did the next. Life in Lakeview Estates became exactly what I'd hoped it would be when I'd first moved in. Peaceful, well-maintained, and drama-free. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Brenda Patterson was released from jail after serving 14 months. She'd moved to Florida to live with her sister and was working as a receptionist at a dental office. I hoped she'd found peace. Carol Henderson and Patricia Morrison, the other former board members, had apologized publicly at an HOA meeting and had taken on volunteer roles helping with community events. They'd been forgiven, mostly. Trust took longer to rebuild than buildings. As for me, I served on the HOA's Oversight Committee for 2 years, helping to review major decisions and ensure transparency. It wasn't exciting work, but it was important. I'd learned that communities don't maintain themselves. They require engagement, vigilance, and people willing to ask difficult questions. 4 years after the roof collapse, I was elected to the HOA board myself. I'd never wanted the position, but enough neighbors had asked that I felt obligated to accept. Robert Martinez was stepping down after leading the community through its recovery, and people trusted me to help maintain the reforms he'd implemented. My first board meeting was on a Tuesday evening in March. 15 homeowners attended, a healthy turnout that would have been unthinkable under Brenda's leadership. We discussed landscaping plans, pool maintenance schedules, and a proposal to install new playground equipment. Everything was routine, normal, boring. It was perfect. As the meeting wrapped up, a homeowner raised her hand. "I have a question about the snow removal clause in the HOA contract. Does that still exist?" I pulled up the bylaws on my laptop and searched for the relevant section. No, that clause was completely removed in the 2022 revision. All snow removal from community buildings is now handled by licensed professionals, with costs split equally among all homeowners. No individual homeowner will ever be asked to perform maintenance on community structures. "Good," she said. "I just wanted to make sure. I heard stories about what happened before I moved here, and I wanted to know we were protected." "You are," I assured her. "Those days are over." After the meeting, I drove home through the quiet streets of Lakeview Estates. Streetlights illuminated tidy homes and well-kept lawns. The clubhouse glowed warmly in the distance, hosting a yoga class in its multi-purpose room. The pool house, barely visible from the main road, stood solid and safe. Everything was as it should be. I thought about sending a final bill to Brenda Patterson, as the title of my story might suggest, but the truth was more complicated. The real bill had been paid by everyone. The homeowners who'd covered the special assessment, the community that had lost its faith in leadership, and Brenda herself, who'd lost her freedom and reputation. I'd been vindicated in every practical way. The HOA had paid me damages, admitted fault, and changed its ways. Justice had been served, but I'd learned something important through the whole mess. Standing up to abuse of power isn't just about being right. It's about creating a record, offering solutions, and giving people a chance to make the right choice even when they're determined to make the wrong one. Brenda Patterson had demanded I clear snow from roofs that weren't my responsibility. She'd threatened me with fines and liens for refusing to risk my safety for her convenience. She'd manipulated her board and falsified documents to avoid spending money properly, so I'd let the roofs collapse. Not out of spite or revenge, but because I'd exhausted every reasonable alternative. I'd warned her, I'd offered solutions, and I'd documented everything. The repair bill had indeed been sent, but not by me. It had been sent by consequences, by accountability, by the basic principle that actions have costs and someone has to pay them. Brenda had paid with her freedom and future. The community had paid with money and trust. I'd paid with stress and legal fees. But in the end, we'd all gained something more valuable. A community that worked properly, leaders who could be held accountable, and the knowledge that standing up to petty tyrants was worth the effort. The snow would fall again next winter and the winter after that. But the roofs would be cleared by professionals, the buildings would stand firm, and the homeowners of Lakeview Estates would sleep soundly knowing their HOA worked for them, not against them. And I would park my truck in my driveway, drink my coffee in peace, and never again have to argue with anyone about whose responsibility it was to clear snow from a community building roof. Some lessons are expensive. Some are painful, but the important ones stick. I pulled into my driveway, turned off my car, and looked up at my house. It was mine, truly mine, free from the threat of capricious fines and absurd demands. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything.